It was a regular afternoon at Davis Diner, a small, family-run restaurant known for its home-style meals and no-nonsense owner, Mr. Davis. He was proud of his establishment, strict about cleanliness, punctuality, and the kind of customers he allowed through his doors. Business was booming that day. Every table was filled with chatter and the sound of sizzling grills. The waitstaff rushed from one corner to another as the smell of fried chicken and coffee filled the air. Just as Mr. Davis was checking receipts behind the counter, the door opened and in walked two rugged-looking men. They wore worn jeans, leather jackets, and baseball caps pulled low over their faces. One of them had a long ponytail and carried himself with quiet confidence. The other, with a calm but powerful aura, scanned the room silently before nodding toward an empty table near the corner. They didn't look like the usual crowd that came to Davis Diner. Their presence drew a few curious stares, but no one said a word. Mr. Davis frowned slightly. Something about them seemed off. Maybe it was their tough look, or the fact that they didn't smile or talk much. Without greeting them, he walked over. "We're full," he said flatly. "You'll have to wait outside." The taller man, polite and calm, responded, "That's all right, sir. We don't mind waiting." Mr. Davis shook his head. "No, you don't understand. We're really full. Maybe try somewhere else." The two men glanced at each other, then back at him. They didn't argue. Instead, they gave a respectful nod and quietly stepped aside. One of the waitresses whispered, "They look kind of familiar." But Mr. Davis cut her off. "Yeah, well, familiar or not, this isn't a place for drifters." As the two men walked out the door, a few customers exchanged confused looks. No one knew yet that the man with the ponytail was Seagal, and the calm, quiet one beside him was Chuck Norris himself. And what happened next would turn this small-town diner into the most talked-about restaurant in America. The moment the door closed behind those two men, Mr. Davis went right back to his counter, wiping his hands with the same cloth he always carried. To him, it was just another day, another couple of customers he didn't have time for. But something about the silence in the diner felt heavier than before. The clatter of forks and plates softened, conversation slowed, and the waitress named Lily leaned toward the window, watching as the two men stood outside quietly near the parking lot. "They didn't even get angry," she whispered. "They just left," Mr. Davis shrugged. "People like that always come around looking for trouble. Better to keep them out before they start something." But not everyone agreed. One of the regulars at the corner booth, an old truck driver named Carl, raised an eyebrow. "Trouble? Those fellas looked polite to me. Didn't even talk back." Mr. Davis shot him a look. "Carl, you know I don't tolerate disrespect. This is a family place. I can't have men like that scaring my customers." The staff exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew Mr. Davis's reputation. He was quick to judge. And once he made up his mind about someone, there was no changing it. Outside, the two men stood beside their black SUV. They weren't angry. In fact, one of them, the man with the ponytail, smiled faintly. "Guess we'll find another spot," he said in a deep, calm voice. The other nodded. "He's just doing his job. Let's go easy on him." They got in the car quietly and drove away. Back inside, Lily finally spoke up. "You shouldn't have done that, Mr. Davis. They were polite. You didn't even ask their names." Mr. Davis waved his hand dismissively. "Names don't matter. If people want respect, they should look respectable." The young waiter, Ben, looked up nervously. "Sir, one of them looked really familiar. I swear I've seen him in a movie or something." The owner smirked. "Oh, sure, next you'll tell me I just kicked out Hollywood stars." The tension slowly melted as laughter rippled through the diner. But Ben didn't laugh. Something about the calm, powerful presence of those two men stuck in his mind. Hours passed. The lunch rush faded and the sun began to set over the small town. Mr. Davis finally sat down with a cup of coffee, satisfied that the day was ending peacefully. Then, the bell over the door jingled again. A young couple walked in, chatting excitedly.
"Hey, did you hear?"
the man said. "Chuck Norris and Seagal are in town filming a special training video for the local police department." The diner went silent. Every head turned toward the couple. Ben's eyes went wide. "Wait, what did you just say?" The man laughed. "Yeah, they were spotted at the gas station just a few blocks from here. Can you believe it?" Ben slowly turned toward Mr. Davis, his face pale. "Sir, those were the two men you kicked out." The coffee cup froze halfway to Mr. Davis's mouth. "What?" I'm serious, Ben said. That was them. Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal. I knew they looked familiar. Lily gasped. Carl smirked from his booth. Well, Mr. Davis, looks like you might have kicked out the two toughest men on the planet. Mr. Davis laughed nervously, waving it off. No, come on, they wouldn't just walk into a place like this. But even as he said it, a sinking feeling began to twist in his gut. What if it was true? He hurried to the window, looking out at the empty street where the SUV had been parked. Nothing. Just the fading glow of the evening sun. For the first time in years, the confident, sharp-tongued restaurant owner felt a twinge of doubt. He turned back to his staff. Don't start rumors. We don't know who they were. Ben shook his head. Sir, I'm telling you, I'm sure. I saw that same guy in an old martial arts movie with Bruce Lee. That was Chuck Norris. Lily added, and the other one, with the ponytail. I've seen him in Under Siege. That's Steven Seagal. Mr. Davis swallowed hard. His voice softened. Well, if that's true, then I just made the biggest mistake of my life. A long silence followed. Then Carl, still sitting in his booth, leaned forward with a grin. Don't worry, boss. Maybe they'll come back and kick you out next time. The entire diner erupted in laughter, but this time Mr. Davis didn't join in. He looked toward the door again, as if half expecting the two men to return. But deep down he already knew. If they ever did, he'd treat them, and anyone else, a lot differently. Have you ever seen someone get judged before people knew who they really were? Tell me in the comments, and say which country or city you're watching from right now. As the camera pans out, the neon lights of Davis Diner flicker in the night, and Mr. Davis stands by the window, staring into the dark street, replaying that moment in his mind. Little did he know that this was only the beginning of his lesson in humility. The next morning, the diner opened as usual. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air, and the sound of sizzling bacon filled the kitchen. But the mood was different. Everyone was quieter. The laughter, the morning chatter, it all felt muted. Mr. Davis stood behind the counter trying to focus on his morning routine, but his mind wasn't on the receipts anymore. The image of those two men, calm, polite, and composed, kept replaying in his head. He tried to brush it off, convincing himself it was all a misunderstanding. But the unease in his chest refused to fade. Lily, the waitress, broke the silence. Sir, did you see the news this morning? Mr. Davis looked up. No, why? She held out her phone. On the screen was a photo, Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal standing side by side, smiling in front of the local police department. The headline read, Action Legends Visit Small Town to Support Police Charity Event. The caption below made Mr. Davis's stomach drop. Spotted at several local spots, including a family diner near Main Street. Everyone turned to look at him. Ben, the young waiter, crossed his arms. Sir, that's us. They were here yesterday. Mr. Davis stared at the photo. Same jackets, same caps, same faces. He didn't even need to say it. Everyone already knew. He took a slow breath, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, maybe they just stopped by. Maybe they didn't mind. Lily frowned. They did mind, sir. You threw them out, Ben added quietly. They weren't rude. They just wanted a meal. For a moment, no one spoke. The usually confident Mr. Davis had no comeback this time. His voice softened. I didn't know. I thought they were just... Carl, the truck driver, walked in right then, the morning paper in hand. He dropped it on the counter with a smirk. Look familiar, Davis? On the front page, another photo of Chuck and Steven, this time standing beside their SUV. The very same SUV that had parked outside Davis Diner. Carl chuckled. Guess you've got the honor of being the only man to ever kick Chuck Norris out of a building, and live to tell about it. Laughter rippled through the room, but Mr. Davis didn't join in. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up the paper. He wasn't just embarrassed, he was ashamed. For years, he had prided himself on being a good judge of character. He always believed he could spot trouble a mile away. But yesterday he realized how wrong he'd been. He hadn't judged them because they looked dangerous. He'd judged them because they didn't look rich, because they didn't look important. Ben spoke up again. You know what's funny, sir? Even after you told them to leave, they didn't get angry. They didn't shout or argue, they just respected you. That last line hit hard. Mr. Davis lowered the paper and stared out the window. Outside, the same street stretched before him, calm, ordinary, but suddenly it looked different. He sighed deeply. Maybe I owe them an apology. Lily smiled softly. That would be the right thing to do. For the rest of the morning, the diner buzzed with whispers. Locals came in, already talking about it. News spread fast in small towns, and before long, everyone knew what had happened. By lunchtime, people were jokingly calling Davis Diner the place that kicked out Chuck Norris. But underneath the humor, there was an uncomfortable truth, and Mr. Davis felt it deeply. He kept checking his watch, glancing at the door, hoping they might walk back in. But they didn't. Hours passed. The sun began to set again, painting the sky with streaks of gold and orange. The diner quieted down after the dinner rush. Lily approached him gently. You know, sir, sometimes people walk into our lives just to teach us a lesson. He nodded slowly. Yeah, and sometimes the lesson hits harder than you expect. He leaned on the counter, lost in thought. For the first time, he began to see his restaurant differently, not as a place to control, but as a place to connect. He thought about how many other people he might have judged unfairly over the years, how many polite faces he might have dismissed just because they didn't look a certain way. Outside, a light breeze swayed the diner's old sign. The neon letters flickered faintly. Davis Diner, open since 1974. And in that quiet, reflective moment, something inside Mr. Davis changed. He realized that respect isn't something people have to earn by appearance. It's something they deserve by default. He looked at Lily and Ben and said softly, If they ever come back. Their meal's on the house, Lily smiled. I'll hold you to that, boss. Mr. Davis chuckled faintly, the first genuine smile he'd had all day. But little did he know. His lesson in humility was far from over, because Chuck Norris and Seagal, the very men he had turned away, were about to come back into his life in a way he'd never expect. If you were that waiter and realized your boss had just kicked out two legends, what would you do? Would you tell him right away, or wait to see what happens next? Comment below. The next day, Davis Diner was busier than it had been in years. People weren't just coming for pancakes or coffee anymore. They were coming for the story. Customers whispered over booths, laughing softly, pointing toward the counter where Mr. Davis stood. That's the guy, one teenager whispered to his friend. He kicked out Chuck Norris and Seagal. No way, his friend said, laughing. He's still alive. Even Lily couldn't help but smile when she overheard it. But Mr. Davis didn't find it funny. He could feel the eyes on him, the judgment, the teasing, and every joke made his stomach twist tighter. He had become the punchline of the whole town. Still, he tried to brush it off, focusing on customers, pretending everything was fine. But by lunchtime, the tension was too thick to ignore. A local TV news crew arrived outside, cameras in hand. The reporter, a young woman with a bright smile, stepped inside with a microphone. Mr. Davis, we're doing a story about Chuck Norris and Seagal's visit to town. Would you mind answering a few questions? The diner went silent. All heads turned. Mr. Davis froze for a moment, then forced a nervous laugh. Oh, I don't think I'm the right person to ask. The reporter smiled politely. Actually, several people said you met them yesterday. Is that true? He hesitated. His throat felt dry. Well, met is a strong word. Lily stepped forward quietly. They came here, ma'am. He asked them to leave. The reporter raised an eyebrow. You kicked them out? A few customers chuckled. Someone in the back whispered, Oh, this is going viral for sure. The camera light blinked red, recording every word. Mr. Davis felt a bead of sweat run down his temple. Listen, it was a misunderstanding. I didn't know who they were. The reporter leaned in slightly. But you judged them, right? Based on how they looked? The question hit him like a jab. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then finally, he sighed. Yes, he admitted quietly. I did, the crowd murmured. Phones came out, people filming the moment. Mr. Davis looked straight into the camera. I was wrong. I shouldn't have judged them. Not them, not anyone. I've learned that the hard way. The reporter smiled softly. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Davis. She left soon after, and as the door closed, the diner erupted in whispers again. Ben looked at him. Sir, That was brave of you to say. Mr. Davis didn't feel brave. He just felt tired. He turned toward the windows, and that's when he saw it. A black SUV pulling up across the street. The same one. The entire diner seemed to freeze. Even the background music from the old jukebox faded into silence. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a tall man in a leather jacket, Steven Seagal. Then on the other side another figure emerged, calm, steady, and unmistakable. Chuck Norris gasps filled the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, it's really them." Lily's eyes widened. "Sir," they came back. Mr. Davis's hands trembled slightly as he stepped out from behind the counter. Every pair of eyes in the diner followed him as he walked toward the door. The doorbell jingled softly as he stepped outside. For a long moment, he just stood there face to face with the two legends he had thrown out. "Mr. Norris, Mr. Seagal," he began, his voice shaking. "I owe you both an apology. What I did was wrong." Chuck Norris looked at him calmly. "You were protecting your business." "I respect that," Steven Seagal added, "but sometimes judgment blinds us to truth." Mr. Davis nodded, shame burning in his chest. "You're right. I was wrong to judge you. I'm deeply sorry." Chuck smiled faintly. "We all make mistakes. What matters is whether we learn from them." The crowd inside the diner pressed against the windows, watching the scene unfold. Some even stepped outside, recording with their phones. Mr. Davis glanced toward the diner. "If you'd let me, I'd be honored if you both came inside." This time, as my guests, the two men exchanged a look. Then, to everyone's surprise, Chuck nodded. "All right. But we're paying for our own meal," Steven smirked. "And I'll have the steak." Laughter rippled through the onlookers as the three men walked back into the diner together. Inside, people stood and clapped. Phones flashed. It felt like a scene straight out of a movie. Mr. Davis led them to a corner booth, the best seat in the house, and personally handed them menus. As they sat down, Lily leaned toward Ben and whispered, "He's never done that for anyone before." Ben grinned. "Guess legends get legendary treatment." Mr. Davis didn't care about the attention anymore. He felt lighter. For the first time in years, his pride gave way to something far more powerful: humility. As Chuck and Steven thanked him for the meal, he smiled and said, "No, gentlemen. Thank you. You reminded me of the kind of man I should have been all along." The camera zooms out as laughter and conversation fill the diner again. But this time, it's warm, genuine, and full of respect. If you were Chuck Norris or Steven Seagal, would you forgive the owner or walk away for good? Let me know in the comments, and tell me what you'd have done in his place. Outside, the diner's neon sign flickered again, glowing brighter than ever, as if the place itself had finally learned a little humility. But the story wasn't over yet. Because what happened after that lunch would turn Davis Diner into a worldwide headline. The next morning, Davis Diner woke up to a completely different reality. What had been a small-town restaurant the day before was now trending across the internet. Clips of Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal sitting in the diner were everywhere. On TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, even the evening news. Someone had recorded the entire apology outside, capturing the exact moment Mr. Davis swallowed his pride. The video title read, "Man kicks out Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal. What happens next will restore your faith in humanity." It had already hit 4 million views in less than 12 hours. Inside the diner, Lily scrolled through her phone, eyes wide. "Sir, you need to see this." Mr. Davis, who was busy flipping pancakes on the grill, sighed. "If it's another meme, I don't want to know." But when Lily held out her phone, he froze. On screen, a short clip showed him, standing outside with Chuck Norris, admitting he was wrong. The comments were flooding in faster than she could read them. Wow, respect to this man for owning up to his mistake. This is how you handle being wrong. Humility and grace. Can we all just appreciate how calm Chuck Norris was? Legends meeting lessons. Mr. Davis stared at the screen, speechless. His hands trembled slightly, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment. It was from emotion. People weren't mocking him anymore. They were admiring him. The phone buzzed again, a new notification. This time from a verified account. Chuck Norris official had reposted the video with the caption, "We all make mistakes. It's how we respond that defines us. Much respect to Mr. Davis and his team. Great pancakes, by the way, Lily gasped. Sir, Chuck Norris just mentioned your diner. Ben nearly dropped a tray of glasses. We're famous. Mr. Davis just stood there blinking in disbelief. I don't even have Twitter. Within hours, news vans were lined up outside. Customers poured in from nearby towns just hoping to eat where the humility moment happened. By noon, there was a line stretching around the block. People were taking selfies in front of the neon Davis Diner sign. Someone even printed shirts that said, "Never judge a book nor a diner, I'm by its cover." Inside, the energy was electric. Reporters interviewed customers asking what they thought of Mr. Davis's turnaround. Everyone had something to say, he owned up. That's rare these days, one woman said. I came to see the place where Chuck Norris taught a man respect, laughed another. Even the mayor stopped by that afternoon, shaking Mr. Davis's hand. You've put our town on the map, my friend, he said warmly. Mr. Davis smiled humbly. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to make things right. As the lunch rush continued, he took a moment to step outside, standing beneath the diner's glowing sign. Cars drove by honking. People waved. He smiled. Not out of pride, but out of gratitude. For years, he'd run his diner like a fortress. Strict, closed off, always in control. But now he saw what it could really be, a place of connection, laughter, and second chances. Inside, Ben approached him. Sir, we've got a customer on line 2. Says he's from a talk show in Los Angeles, wants to interview you. Mr. Davis blinked. A talk show? Lily grinned. Looks like you're going national. He laughed softly, shaking his head. Imagine that. A man makes one big mistake and suddenly everyone wants to hear him talk about it. But that night, after the rush died down and the lights dimmed, Mr. Davis sat alone in his corner booth, the same booth where Chuck Norris and Seagal had eaten just the day before. He replayed everything in his mind, his arrogance, his apology and the forgiveness he'd been shown, and for the first time in years, he whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Just then the doorbell jingled. A delivery man stepped inside holding a small package. Delivery for Mr. Davis. He signed for it, curious, and opened it right there. Inside was a framed photo, Chuck Norris and Seagal smiling at the diner table. Below the photo, a handwritten note read, To Mr. Davis, thank you for the best meal we've had in a long time. Chuck and Stephen, his eyes welled up as he read the words. He stood there silently, staring at the note, then placed the photo right above the counter where everyone could see it. Lily smiled when she noticed it. Looks like we've got our wall of fame now, Mr. Davis chuckled. Yeah, but more than that, we've got our reminder. He tapped the frame gently. That respect should always come before judgment. The camera pans out slowly, the diner glowing warmly under the night sky, customers laughing inside, the photo shining proudly on the wall. If you were in Mr. Davis's shoes, would you have the courage to admit your mistake in front of the whole world? Tell me honestly, what would you have done? As the video fades to black, a final text appears on screen. Humility doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. A week later, Davis Diner didn't look like the same little roadside spot anymore. The old neon sign had been repaired, glowing brighter than ever. The parking lot stayed full from sunrise till midnight. Tourists arrived from neighboring states just to take selfies under the photo of Chuck Norris and Seagal on the wall. Inside, laughter filled every corner. The jukebox played classic country tunes, and the smell of fresh pies and grilled burgers made people feel instantly at home. Mr. Davis stood behind the counter, pouring coffee for a young couple. He smiled, genuinely smiled, at every customer who walked in. He had become a different man. The once strict owner who used to judge people by their clothes or their tone now greeted everyone with warmth. Whether it was a trucker, a teenager, or a tired mother with 2 kids, everyone got the same friendly, "Welcome to Davis Diner," and people noticed. Lily leaned over the counter one morning and whispered, "You've changed, sir." In the best way. Mr. Davis smiled. Guess it took getting kicked by life to realize what matters. Ben laughed. Or kicked by Chuck Norris. They all chuckled. But as the day went on, a letter arrived. Thick envelope, gold-embossed seal. Mr. Davis tore it open. Inside was an invitation. You are cordially invited to attend the National Small Business Conference in Los Angeles, where you'll share your story on humility and leadership. At the bottom, two signatures stood out, Chuck Norris and Seagal. Mr. Davis just stared at it for a long moment. "They want me to speak?" Lily grinned. "Looks like your lesson's about to inspire the whole country." A week later, he found himself on a flight to LA, nervously gripping his speech notes. Cameras flashed when he landed. News outlets still remembered the diner man who learned humility. Backstage, before going on, he caught a glimpse of Chuck Norris and Seagal standing near the curtain. They gave him a simple nod, silent encouragement. When his name was announced, applause filled the auditorium. He stepped on stage, heart pounding. He looked out at the crowd and hundreds of entrepreneurs, leaders, and dreamers waiting to hear him speak. He took a deep breath. "I used to think running a business was about control," he began, "about keeping the wrong people out. But one day, I kicked out the wrong men, two men who taught me the most powerful lesson I'll ever learn." The room fell silent. "I learned that respect isn't something people earn after proving themselves. It's something you give freely because it's what makes us human." He paused, voice steady now. "That day I lost my pride but found my heart. And I'll tell you, that's a trade worth making." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Some people even stood to clap. Chuck Norris stepped onto the stage, shaking his hand firmly. "You did good, Mr. Davis," Seagal added with a smirk. "Not bad for a guy who threw us out." The crowd laughed and Mr. Davis grinned. "Guess I had to learn from the best." Later that evening, as the sun set over Los Angeles, Chuck, Stephen, and Mr. Davis sat outside a small cafe sipping coffee together. Mr. Davis looked at them thoughtfully. "You two could have humiliated me that day. You could have blasted me online, made me a joke. But you didn't, you forgave me." "Why?" Chuck smiled. "Because anger only teaches fear. Forgiveness teaches growth," Stephen nodded. "We've all been judged at some point. The real strength is turning judgment into understanding." Mr. Davis looked down at his cup, eyes misting slightly. "I'll never forget that." Chuck reached into his pocket and handed him a small pin, shaped like a fist and a heart. "Keep this. A reminder that strength and compassion belong together." Mr. Davis took it gently. "Thank you. Both of you." They stood, shook hands, and went their separate ways. Three men forever connected by a single act of humility. When Mr. Davis returned home, the diner was busier than ever. But this time, it wasn't just about the food. People came for the story. They came to feel what the diner represented: redemption, kindness, and respect. He framed the conference photo beside the picture of Chuck and Stephen, and underneath he added a plaque that read, "Everyone deserves a second chance, and including me." That night, as the diner lights dimmed and the last customer left, Mr. Davis flipped the sign to closed and looked around. The same walls, the same tables, but everything felt new. He whispered to himself, "Funny how the best thing that ever happened to me started with the worst mistake I ever made." He turned off the lights, the glow from the photo frames reflecting softly in the dark, a symbol of how far he'd come. If life gave you a second chance to fix a mistake, would you take it or let pride get in the way? Tell me in the comments, and share this with someone who believes in redemption. As the music swells, the camera pans out one last time, showing Davis Diner, now shining like a beacon under the night sky, proof that even the hardest hearts can change. Months passed, but the story of Davis Diner never faded. What began as a moment of embarrassment had grown into a message that touched millions. News outlets continued to share the video of Mr. Davis's apology and his unlikely friendship with Chuck Norris and Seagal. The diner's walls were now covered with letters, photos, and messages from people all over the world. Some came from celebrities, others from ordinary folks who had seen the video and felt inspired to change their own lives. One letter stood out, written by a teenager from Brazil. "Mr. Davis, I used to judge people the same way you did, but your story taught me that kindness is the real power. Thank you." Mr. Davis read it quietly one morning, his eyes misting over. "I can't believe this little diner is changing people's hearts," he whispered. Lily smiled. "That's what happens when you lead with humility, sir." Ben added, "You didn't just serve food, you served a lesson." The camera pans across the diner, families laughing, friends taking photos near the famous picture on the wall. The place had become more than a restaurant. It had become a symbol. A few weeks later, a package arrived at the diner. No return address, just a simple label, for Mr. Davis. Inside was a small golden plaque. It read, "Presented to Davis Diner, for reminding the world that respect has no price tag." And at the bottom, 2 engraved signatures, Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal. Mr. Davis placed the plaque beside the counter, right under the photo of him shaking hands with the 2 legends. Customers noticed it right away. Some took pictures. Others paused, smiled, and nodded in appreciation. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the diner glowed warmly under its neon sign. Mr. Davis sat in his corner booth, the same booth where Chuck and Steven once sat, sipping coffee as he looked around the packed room. He wasn't the same man anymore. He had gone from a proud, stubborn business owner to someone who finally understood what real strength meant. Not power, not control, but humility. He thought back to that day, how quickly he had judged those 2 men, and how gently they had forgiven him. And now, their forgiveness had changed everything. The door opened. A young man entered, wearing a dusty jacket and holding a small backpack. He looked nervous. "Sir, do you have any cheap meals?" "I don't have much money." Mr. Davis smiled warmly. "You sit right there, son. Dinner's on me." The young man's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" Mr. Davis said, patting his shoulder. "Everybody deserves a good meal, and a little respect." Lily smiled from behind the counter. She knew what that meant. It wasn't just a free plate of food, and it was proof that Mr. Davis had truly changed. Later that night, as the diner closed, Mr. Davis turned off the lights one by one. Only the soft glow of the neon sign remained. He looked up at the photos on the wall. Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal, and that golden plaque shining softly in the dark. He smiled and whispered, "Thank you for finding your way into my diner, and into my life." Outside, the camera pans up toward the glowing sign, Davis Diner, where everyone is welcome. The music swells gently as the narrator's voice fades in. Sometimes, life humbles us in the most unexpected ways, and when it does, remember, the mistake that breaks your pride might be the one that saves your soul. Final call to action. If you believe everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are or where they come from, type respect in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring true stories that remind us it's never too late to change. The screen fades to black. Soft piano music plays as the final words appear. Humility is the highest form of strength.